Welcome to another broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. All past shows are archived. You can find them at ArtistFirst.com. We welcome your questions and comments. Send them to DJ@ArtistFirst.com. And now out to your hosts. It's Michael and Margaret Lyons.
And thank you very much, Z-Man. It is Michael.
And Margaret.
And Margaret Lyons. And this is The Soul of the Everyman. And where it's just not going to change. Actually, tonight, our topic tonight is change. And as we all know, change is bad. There are three truisms, right, Margaret? We came up with this, and we thought this would be a great thing to talk about. The three truisms are this: you say this to somebody. You say, "Life is change," and they'll say, "Of course, life is change." And then you'll say, "Change is bad," and they'll say, "Change is bad." And then what you say to them is, you want to get them confused. Does that mean life is bad? And they'll be like, "No, life is good." So, discuss. But in fact, I think we literally can get anybody to agree with each one of those statements individually. That life is good. You say, "Well, life is good." People say, "Oh, yes, life is good." Or if you just sort of...
Change. Change in general is the thing that makes people nuts.
Right, but if you say to somebody that, life is all about change, they'll say, "Of course, life is always about change. Life is always different every day." In fact, we often would say that our lives would be, not worth living if they weren't in some way different every day. That kind of an idea of a static life is abhorrent to us. But if you then say, well, just put the statement out there, well, change is bad, and people say, "Oh yes, change is bad. I don't like change," and we don't. We none of us really like change, and I think we can jump off at any one of those three statements. But let's take that one. Why don't we like change?
We're creatures of habit. We like to establish a habit and just keep up with it, even though we may think that, oh, it's boring, but we like to be able to expect what's going to happen.
Well, and we feel in control. We want to know, we want to have a plan. We want to make a plan. A plan is good. If you said plans are good, people are like, "Yep, plans are good. Got to have a plan." But what the old saying is, life is what happens while you're making plans. And the truth of it is, because we acknowledge that regardless of our plan or how much we don't like change, it comes anyway. Like change is no respecter of persons.
Change is the only thing that you can be certain of in this life.
That's right. Exactly. If there's a funny saying. This is, and this is true. We'll just say it of New Jersey, but it's true of lots of places. If you don't like the weather, wait 10 minutes, because like the weather, our lives change. When something happens to us, we often will make an analogy to something like the weather, like a great storm. I'm weathering a great storm now, meaning that I'm having a lot of change in my life, that I don't know what's going to happen next. And that's kind of always the scary thing about change, is it's implicit in its definition, is it's the unknown. If you could plan out everything, and everything you planned out always happened, besides being incredibly boring, you'd never be caught off guard. You'd always know what was going to happen next. Even if you couldn't say, well, everything has to be good. Even if you say, well, I know next week something horrible is going to happen, but I know it's going to happen, so I'm going to get prepared, and I will be prepared, and it will not catch me unprepared and off guard.
I think that what you would get is people saying, "Well, no, I'm not going to have anything bad happen."
Oh, well, well.
Okay, that just...
You've come to the nub of it, yes. if we could get our plans always fulfilled, and in this, let's call it a perfect universe, although I wouldn't say that that would be a perfect universe, but some people would think of it as being a perfect universe. That everything the only things that they had planned for and had, in other words,
anticipated.
Well, not only just anticipated, but in other words, had allowed to happen. In essence, they're so much the masters of their destiny that nothing happens in their life that they don't know about and that they haven't planned and prepared for. And I think you're right. The first thing they would do is eliminate anything they perceived as bad.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very basic tendency that we associate closely with change, is that change is bad.
Mm-hmm.
Because we just don't know. There's another saying, Margaret, which is better the devil you know.
Ah.
Right? You say, well, things are really, really terrible, but at least I know where I am. I don't want to risk trying something new because it might even be worse.
Mm-hmm.
At least I know. And with people, you have this thing called Stockholm syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, in its worst embodiment, it really refers to people who become sympathetic to their kidnappers. But it can be also seen in people who are in a terrible situation, and yet they don't want to do anything to try and get themselves out, because they're almost saying to themselves, well, every time I try something, it just gets worse. So I'll just stop trying something and I'll live with it. I'll deal with the horribleness of it in the hopes that it just won't change, that it'll just be something that I understand every day, that this is the misery I've got, and darn it, I like this misery. I'm here and I'm going to stay here.
That's when you give up all hope.
Yes. That's a great point, by the way, is that hope and change are oftentimes used together, but in most cases we have negative thoughts about change and very positive thoughts about hope. Hope is always also change. I mean, if you're hoping for something, you're not hoping that it stays the same usually. You're hoping that something will become better.
Mm-hmm.
Hope is about the future. Hope is about something changing for the better.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes when people have hope, we look at them and say, oh, you're just a fool. This is a foolish thing that you're thinking about, because change is always bad. And therefore your hope, right, oh, you're right. Change is bad, so therefore hoping for things to get better is a fool's errand,
Well, it's the best way to bring yourself into a depression.
Exactly.
You're basically only looking at the worst scenario.
Mm. So the premise that change is bad is really a premise which is associated with hopelessness. In other words, what we're really saying is no matter what changes, it's going to get worse. That all change will always be something worse than the situation we're in, and all we're really trying to do is stay right where we are and just preserve, just persevere.
Well, it's interesting because people are looking at their situation and saying, well, I have this amount of pain or dissatisfaction in my life, and I know how it feels, but I can bear it. I'm just going to stay right here.
Right.
And hope says, well, around the corner, something good can always happen. Do you want to take that? You have to
take that.
Right. This is what I was about to say. You have to make the decision to take a step in either direction, but you're going to be taking a step, whether you realize it or not.
And what does that require is, courage, but really faith. You have to take, hope is always done on a sort of a leap of faith. We had a show not too long ago about hope, and hope is very closely associated with putting yourself out there into the unknown, looking for better circumstances, for something good to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't know. And I think that's why when you say to someone, sort of, standing there at the bar having a beer, and you say, change is bad, and you're going to get right away, yeah, I hate change. It's just it's just an automatic, like, truism. Change is bad. This happened, that happened. It's all going to be terrible. Everything's going to be bad for the rest of the time.
And it's always a complaint that it's something that I didn't anticipate.
Yep.
And you sit there and, well, most of life you didn't anticipate. If you find, well, how does that change anything about where you're going, except you're just looking around at your feet and saying, I only know around here.
Remember that? Sorry, that's something out of our distant past. But in fact, though, the reason that people say change is bad is because of fear. The fear of the unknown is the big driver why we think that change is bad. Because change, by its very nature, is unknown, unknowable. It's unexpected, and you're not prepared for it. And even when people tell you, you get the warning, oh, the company's going to the company's reorganizing and things are going to be great, and you're you're stuck at, the company's reorganizing and I'm probably going to lose my job and everything's going to be horrible for the rest of the line. And you tell yourself this whole horrible, terrible story, because as soon as somebody announces, sort of out of the blue, that something that you didn't know is going to happen, and it seems sort of inevitable and sudden, and your life circumstances, something you care about, because that's the other thing, Margaret, is change doesn't matter if we don't care about it. So it's always, when change is frightening, it's when something changes that we care about, something to do with our job, with our home, with the people we love. So when we hear things that, especially when somebody just tells you out of the blue, oh, the XYZ company is making the green bottles now instead of the blue ones. Oh, I'm sure everything that comes in the green bottles is going to taste terrible. Those green bottles are awful and blah, 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 blah. Because it's change. I like the blue bottles.
Right.
Everything tastes, it's like remember when the whole kerfluffle about New Coke and Old Coke, and then 17,000 different Cokes, and they had to go back to the previous Coke, and I think they dug up the archives and found out the real recipe with the actual cocaine in it, and thought, this will be good. But you see, the familiarity and the fact that you care about it, those two things are your comfort zone, right? We always talk about comfort zones. Why when you say change is bad is immediately you now have to think, what will I do? How will this affect me? The things I did before, will they still work? Will I be asked to do something different? Will I be able to do it? All of a sudden, everything's thrown up in the air, and you have to live. Because
instead of having a program that you previously wrote, that always fascinated me, by the way, watching someone who is in a situation, and it's a new situation, mind you, all right? Mm-hmm. And they've decided they're going to learn how to do whatever this new situation is. So they'll go through things, and it's like they take a notebook out and they write everything down, every possibility, and okay, we do this or we do that or the other thing. And if you're putting your hand to something creative, you have to have that touch of inspiration come in for it to be something viable, something beautiful, something that speaks. Mm-hmm. But what I found was they didn't want that. What they wanted was a procedure that all they would have to do is just follow the procedure, and you would be guaranteed a certain product. Mm-hmm. it didn't matter if it had inspirational touch in it or not, or, it's, oh, well, it was beautiful the first time, so let's make the same exact thing.
Right. The difference between creating a wonderful meal and following a recipe to get to a result, or really the surety, the false surety, really, but the surety traded for the for creativity. You're saying, well, the paint by numbers comes out looking great every time, but yet it doesn't come out. No paint by numbers comes out as an inspired art work. It just comes out as a thing. And by the way, we value it less, generally speaking. Is a paint by numbers is never called great art. You have to risk something. You have to. What are you risking? You're risking failure. So change. One of the things that drives people to hate change is that change implies that you might not be able to deal with it, or you might fail, or you might be called upon to try and do something that you don't know how to do. Oh gosh, I'd have to learn something. This is just no wonder I hate change. Change means learning things. Learning things is bad.
Don't want to stretch too much.
You could anything bad, So that that driver of why change is bad is because change means we have to live, we have to take risks. We might not succeed. We don't know what we're going to get. We could throw all of our efforts into something which turns to naught. It isn't the bond with 17.5% guaranteed rate of return that absolutely at the end of the day gives you your nickel and a half that you can go spend at the dime store. No, it's taking a risk. It's doing something creative and putting it out there and saying, I wonder if people will like it. Maybe they won't. That sounds bad. But you don't get any. It doesn't have life, which you said before.
No viability.
Unless you have that risk, and unless you allow it to have the possibility of failure, it also doesn't have really the possibility of success, of truly being a new thing.
Well, isn't that life? You either have success or failure.
That's terrible.
And that's, but I mean, if you walk into any situation and just realize that those are your only two options.
Oh man, you're scaring the pants off me here. This is terrible.
But it's true. You look at it, it's either successful or it's not, which is a nice way of saying failure. It's like, why is that so scary? So it fails.
So, but exactly. But a lot of people's anxiety comes with the possibility of failure, and why they spend so much time planning and putting together the procedure and making sure they're prepared and making sure everything's is because the possibility of failure is trying to be mitigated as much as possible. We're trying to say, and when you go to them and something fails, I did everything right. I washed my socks, I pinned them together, I colored the thing, I hit the button, the light came on, everything was right, and yet still it failed. It drives them crazy. Because if you do everything right, your success is supposed to be guaranteed.
Oh, who told them that?
Well, this is
who told you that?
But if you want to drive a planner, somebody who plans everything crazy, you just tell them, no matter how much you plan, something could go wrong and you won't be prepared. Screaming out the room, blah 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 blah. I can't hear you. I'm going to plan for that. Because the possibility of failure scares people more than failure itself.
Well, I mean, if you're going to plan something, now I'm not saying not to have any plans, mind you. But what I'm saying is you've got to build in the acknowledgement, the plus or minus factor of whatever percent, that stuff doesn't go 100% right. Can't you just like make room for the fact that stuff happens,
Right.
and instead of sitting there and saying exacting, it must be exacting to the 0.0015, okay? And you're sitting there going, but that's not what happens.
Right.
You're dealing with people
Hmm.
who change their mind at the drop of a hat.
Right. And even if people aren't in the factory, you're just dealing with chance. And a large part of what makes change scary is chance. It's the unknown. It's the randomness. We said this before. So as a truism, as a sort of a thing that people will say, will write down on their list, change is bad. Check. Check. Change is bad. But then I think we've been kind of walking around this, but just to go back to the point, life from the beginning, from the first breath to the last, is constant, unrelenting, unmitigating change. Your body changes, your situation changes, you change your underwear every day. It's important. You everything changes. In fact, the truism that whatever you're doing, life will change, is something that you can get everybody to agree upon. You know, when you're in a bad situation or a good one, one of the things that makes you anxious is that you know the good situation may not last. It may change. Year by year by year, sometimes day by day, our life circumstances change. You do something wrong and you injure yourself, or you through no fault of your own, a deer jumps out in front of your car, or some unforeseeable event happens, or just purely through the passage of time, you get older, you get different, your finances change, the people around you change. They come into your life, they go out of your life. So this constant, unrelenting maelstrom, which is our lives, that we try to kind of sanitize and put a halter on and put boxes and lists and everything, is because we're trying to get a handle on the fact that we can't stop life from changing. And in fact, that's the real fool's errand, is that we hope it'll never change. Talk about having a false hope.
Yeah, that's true. Hoping that things will never change because you happen to be comfortable in the situation you are in right now.
Mm.
But everything changes. It's just the nature of what it is to be living in this world. Everything changes.
Everything changes. And the false of this, what sounds good, is that we just try to keep things from changing, and we'll do anything to preserve and to hold back the march of time. The whole cosmetics industry, the $17 billion cosmetics and Botox and everything, is just trying to halt the sag of stuff.
The weight of gravity.
The weight of gravity. But that whole idea of this endlessly being unaging, endlessly young, is all about trying to deny the fact that we change, that there's no way to escape this fate. The correct way to look at life is embrace the fact that life is change. The wonderful saying which we've all heard, which is carpe diem, which seize the day, and really it's a Buddhist, live in the moment. Because the moment is a moment, and then there's another one, and it changes. And if this one's good, enjoy it right now, because it's the one thing that we can guarantee is it's not going to last. You can't stop it from changing. So,
actually, the discipline of living in the moment is very misunderstood.
Yes, it is.
Because people are sitting there going, well, it must mean that, you're stopping everything and you're not feeling anything, and that's got to be what it is.
Right.
You sit there and you go, no. that's only the beginning step of stopping the thought process.
Right. They almost want to stop. They want to say right there, oh, good. I mean, if I do this, I can stop everything from changing, right? And you're like, you need another lesson.
It's a control issue. They're missing the foundation of the discipline has to do with pulling away from your I-centered perspective.
Right.
And when you pull away and you get distance and you get sight on how things fall together, doesn't mean that you don't participate. Because people think that if you're pulling out of that perspective, that means you're pulling away from what's going on. It's like, no. What you're actually doing is incorporating a broader view, understanding where you've got to put your feet so you don't step in the hole and fall. But also understanding that you are more than your reaction in the moment. Because when you're in that I center, you're really in a reaction to the moment. What do I think about what's going on? How do I feel about how this is unfolding? My heartbeat is increasing. It's racing now. It's like I. And when you can get to a point when you breathe in that moment, disengage from the reaction, and just observe, detached, that's when you can actually live in that moment of now.
Right.
Not anticipating the next moment or looking back on what had happened. It's now, in this breath, where I happen to be in this space and time.
When you finally do realize that moment, the great enlightenment is to realize that you're now moving at the speed of life, and you've got to stay there, which means now you're not still. You are at the crest of a wave that's just moving at the speed of life, but you're just remaining in the moment of now, all the time now, all the time experiencing now.
Right. You are in the moment of now, which has nothing to do with speed.
Well,
speed has to do with doing. It has not. That has not.
The moment of now, as you said, doesn't mean that you live in a moment in the past or a moment in the future. You live in something which is always changing.
You're living in something that is always present.
And therefore, never the same from one moment to the next. That's the speed I'm talking about. The speed is not a physical speed. It's a don't spin yourself into an eddy on the side of life where you relive the past, or spin yourself into a falsehood in which you're trying to imagine the future. You stay right there. The still point is the point which is moving at the speed of reality, as things happen, as things really happen.
The still point has no speed, is what I'm saying.
Exactly.
Okay, the still point is being. So you burn at the still point.
Yeah.
That's what I would call it.
And we've reached the still point at the center of the show.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to take a much needed change and go back to the studio for a studio break, and we'll be back.
Rick Riordan fans, love mythology with plenty of action and humor? Destroyer's Blood is for you. the new fantasy novel by award-winning author Michael Lynes, is Book 1 of the adventures of Dev Kalian, the Blood series. Follow Dev and his magic sword Betrayer as they are suddenly attacked and forced to return to Olympus to fight in a war they want no part in. The world of men and gods is about to be destroyed by Zeus's ancient foe, and only Dev and Trey can stop him. The conflict never stops, and the amazing twist will have you on the edge of your seat. Act now while the ebook is on sale for only 99 cents. Destroyer's Blood is available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere. And while you're there, get the free prequel, It's in the Blood, available for a limited time.
The Timeless Esoterica radio program with Dr. Bruce is broadcast on the fourth Monday of every month at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern on ArtistFirst.com. We explore topics including the paranormal, alien life, mysteries, conspiracies, hidden history, oddities, and much more. Each show will feature a special guest with exciting and thought-provoking discussion. Always keep an open mind, an open heart, live forever, and remember Dr. Bruce believes in you.
There is a Reaper is the story of 5-year-old Christopher Aaron and his life-changing struggle with leukemia. Winner of both the Indie Bragg Medallion as well as the reader's favorite silver medal for memoir, There is a Reaper has more than 100 Amazon book reviews and a 5-star rating. It has been described as life-changing, spiritual, a must-read. Just released on Audible and iTunes, this memoir is also available in paperback and on Amazon Kindle for only 99 cents. Get your copy of this life-changing memoir today.
Hi, this is Minette Lauren, author of Race for the Sun. Do you believe in guardian angels? Check out Book 1 of my Soul Watcher series. It can be found on Amazon.com or anywhere fine books are sold. Go to www.minettelauren.com, and you are listening to the Artist First Radio Network.
The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed is the latest book from Michael Lynes, the award-winning author of There is a Reaper. Featuring 13 original stories, this wide-ranging collection has everything. Forbidden love, gods versus demigods, weird invading aliens, sexy seductive artificial intelligence, and unusual passion between the living and the dead. All set amidst fantastic worlds of pain and loss and boundless joy. From the sublime to the macabre to the bittersweet, The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed will leave you breathless with laughter, brimming with tears, trembling with suspense. Available now on Amazon.com, Google Play, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere.
You are listening to The Soul of the Everyman on the Artist First Radio Network. Now back to your hosts, Margaret and Michael Lynes.
Thank you, Scott.
For a change. And that was good change. And yes, and we are back, and tonight's topic is change. And if you go to the website, maybe we're going to put up a very boss graphic. Might be there. I haven't checked. Basically, the premise that we started out the show with was that there are sort of two things you can get people to agree upon right away. You can say to anybody standing by a bar or wherever you happen to be in the supermarket line, say, change is bad. And everyone will say, yep, change is bad. I hate change. And you can find another group of people and say, life is change. And they'll be like, yeah, life has changed. But if you put those two together and come to the conclusion, life has changed and change is bad. Well, does that mean life is bad? And everyone says, no, life is good. And all those three things, that sort of little mantra of phrases there, kind of sum things up for people. We understand, as sort of a visceral thing that we can't stop change. But yet we spend a lot of money and a lot of time trying to stop change in many, 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 many different ways in our lives, not just our our bodies or our clothes, or a lot of parents would love their children to remain young, dependent and cute and sort of in this sort of infantile or juvenile stage, and letting people grow up, letting your children grow is something that is hard for some people. They'll spend their whole lives infantilizing their children through a variety of ways, because in the best reading of this, they're trying to keep that close relationship, that parent-child relationship. But sometimes under the normal course of life, you have to kind of let them go, and as you let them go, the relationship changes. And then in the circumstances that few people find themselves in, but we did, you have to sometimes let them go, and they don't come back because they've gone on. You lose people in your life. You lose your parents. You lose your loved ones. And you yourself will, one of our tenets on the soul of the everyman is, nobody gets off the planet alive. You too will change, and you too will one day die. Something we don't want to think about. So the whole arc of change is really inescapable, and it's the big lie that we tell ourselves that somehow we can, if we find this magical elixir, we can stop change. We can stop anything we don't want to have happen from happening.
Live forever without change. I know in China, I think their first emperor was looking for the elixir of life, and they would drink all sorts of strange concoctions, like mixed with mercury. Oh my! But anyway, because they just didn't want death to happen. Right. They wanted to be forever young and alive, and that's just the way they wanted it. So when you're emperor of China, you can spend an awful lot of money on stuff.
On stuff, yeah.
But it's just interesting when you think of it, because it's paralleling what you see in Egypt, where the pharaohs were always prepping for their moment of death, because they're going to cross over into eternal life. And all the boats and all the stuff again, and the servants, but that was the mindset that since I'm in charge of everybody, I'm going to be taken straight up into heaven, and I'm going to have my place up there, being brother or sister with the gods, etc., etc., etc. And you're just like, this is not a new concept. This concept has been around since man has died.
Yes, and death is the big change. That's just as birth is a big change. From spirit into incarnation. Then there's from incarnation back into spirit, and both of those inflection points, both incarnation and death, are things that we see as sort of the inexorable march, from birth to death. This arc of life that we go through here.
Those are irrefutable markers,
right? No matter how pretty you make yourself look, or how handsome you make yourself look, or how many air plugs or extensions or whatever you put in, none of that matters at the end of the day. We are mortal, and that degree of change is something that we don't want to think about. And almost, it scares people because it's inexorable, and sometimes it's sudden, and the whole idea of doing everything right so that you live forever. I'm going to juice these things, and I'm going to eat this kind of macrobiotic stuff, and I'm going to have 17 different kinds of elixirs, and whatever the Emperor of China was doing. We're doing the same thing today. It's the whole GNC health food industry that
now the everyday person is able to have the elixirs of life.
Right, and that that whole idea of playing on people's fear of aging, or really their fear of somehow of dying, is to to sell them these new types of elixirs of life.
Well, it comes down, if you go to the root of that, it's that yearning that you have deep inside of you to return to a place that is eternal. That yearning is real, and most people want to deny it. They say, "Oh, well, I want to live forever. I want to be young," but it's like that's the spirit part of you, soul part of you, understanding that there is a place, there is a part of me that is eternal. And I want to bring that forth here, but trying to bring that forth here in a very limited existence. This is a very limited existence. It's not possible in this form.
That's a great point, because that's exactly correct. Is the part of us which is eternal is trying to make the part of us which is not eternal look eternal or feel eternal, or somehow stop the physical as a reflection or as a alternative to rejoining spirit in the way that we all do.
I think it has a lot to do with that concept of you're trying to interact with something that reflects back to you part of you, who you are. So people are reaching outward looking for a reflection of something that is forever.
Yes.
That is the quest that we do down here all the time. Just like I think it was Joseph Campbell was talking about the classic journeys that man takes, and one of them, of course, is looking for the father, or looking for parents, and it's a reflection again back into, we are trying to find what is eternal, what is forever, what carries who I am on, and what have I come from, which is also that yearning of knowing what eternal is. It's deep within us. Our spirit sings of it. Our soul tries to comprehend and communicate that to the body part, this fleshy part of us that is watching everything fall apart.
Right.
Whatever we touch down here just deteriorates. So
right.
How can that be real? How can that yearning possibly be real?
Right. And that's where we get the change is bad, because the basic change we don't want to have happen is that we change. And in fact, if you said to somebody, well, everything around you will change, but you will not. You'll always be 37. You'll always look awesome. You'll always, have all your hair and so on. And they'd say, that's fine. As long as I'm always the same, everything else around me can change. So we're not too bothered by all the other things that change. Even people that we love dearly and that we lose. As long as, if you said to somebody, as long as you never change, you're the immortal, invulnerable, Emperor of China or Pharaoh, they could deal with that. They could say, oh,
they think they could deal with it.
Exactly. I think they could deal with
it.
But you could sell that, and that's what they sell to everybody. That you take X, Y, Z, and you'll never change. You'll always be awesome. And everything else will change. But that's okay.
That is the mental construct.
Yeah.
That is the ego talking. But you know what? When you are actually living, that becomes unacceptable.
Yes. Oh, yes. It's a lie, and it's exactly what people will believe and spend a lot of money trying to achieve. But I think that's what you can sell people. You can sell this idea of the invulnerable I, and it is the I again. It's this ego concept of I'll never change. And then if that's the case, then all other change is okay. So I'm trying to say, when you talk about change being bad, what they're really talking about is me changing is bad. Everything else is okay. I might miss it. I might have to get a new.
You mean things pertaining to me is bad?
Well, what I'm trying to say is when you say to people, when you get down to the nub of it, they say to them, change is bad, and they agree. What they really mean is not that I shouldn't change, or that everything else around them shouldn't change. The person that's telling them this story and so on. We can all change. Everything else around. What they really mean is changes that happen to me are bad. So it's very I-centered. When you say change is bad, you mean anything that happens to me is bad. Everything that happens to you is fine. I don't care what happens to you.
Yeah, no. I wanted to qualify that because it was too broad.
Yes.
Yeah, people don't like it when especially if they've become somewhat comfortable in their misery.
Well, and they've reached a comfort zone, and they if things change in their comfort zone, that's bad.
Right. Right. It's true.
It's true. So that's where I think that's the definition of change is bad. That's the nub of it. Is that any change that happens to me is bad. When you say life is bad and they disagree, they say no, life is good, because life is something, as long as I can control it, as long as I can direct it, as long as I'm in charge, as long as it's I-centered, my life is good.
Mm-hmm.
But true life, which is the unknown, which happens to you without planning, that you can't be prepared for, that when you propose that to people, you say your life is going to be a constant set of unknowable changes that you won't be prepared for. They go, life is bad. I don't want that. I want the life where I never change. That's the life I want. So the life is good is only if I don't change. Change is bad because change means I have to change. As long as I don't have to change. And it's all those statements come down to the ego, to the I me, saying I me never wants to change. I me wants to live forever.
Right. Yeah, it's pretty succinct that way.
Yeah.
Don't want no. And it's always interesting because you have this internal fight going on with yourself. Because there's a part of you that knows that stuff's going to happen. It's always going to happen. It just does. It's not.
There's a truth part of you.
Yes. And then the other one is like, oh no, and it just reminds you of the image of someone sticking their fingers in their ears and going la 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 la.
Yeah, but can we stop for a second there?
Mm-hmm.
There is a truth part of us that knows that that's a lie, that the I me is lying. What part of us is that?
That's your heart knows.
Heart knows.
Your heart knows. Your heart knows the truth, whether it is good or not good. Whatever is happening, it knows the truth. We always said if you want to know the truth, you ask your heart.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you ask your head, it will tell you anything you want to hear.
Right. And the I me is in your head.
Mm-hmm. But your heart knows true.
Right. So I think that the statement, life is good, the real echo, is a heart echo.
Mm-hmm.
Because we know that life is change and life is good in the heart. And we know that good isn't related to change. That good stands alone. That you can't you can't judge good based on whether it changes or not.
Yeah, it's that you would have to define the definition of what is good.
Mm.
Good for me is something that agrees with what my heart is saying, not necessarily with what my head is. It's like when someone is trying to convince you to buy something or go choose this thing, and you listen to all these reasons, and they're always wonderful, dramatic, whatever, so beautiful, so lovely, so, and a sure thing. And then you ask your heart about that. It's like, what does my heart say about that? It's usually like, nah.
Nah. Don't need that.
Right. And you sit there and you go, well, my heart's just not right about that decision. I have to, let me sit with that. And that's the point I like to make. When you sit with your heart, you are at the core of the still point of your own existence. And that's what we all want to come to be able to abide there. Because sometimes it's difficult to abide there because everything around you is pulling you in other directions. And your ego part wants it to go a certain way. You want it to be, this wonderful.
You're right. And the I, me, the ego, sees change and it sees all the time. But I think the eyes of the heart it's a very interesting thing that you've brought up there. When the heart looks at things, it doesn't. The things that resonate are things that don't change. What doesn't change is your relationship, the true you, the you that relates back to the eternal, doesn't change. So if you want to find things that don't change, you have to look into the heart, the things that, and they're not this vast collection of universe of things. There's very few things that don't change, but they're the most important things. The you that is truly you in your heart is the same from the moment you are born to the moment you die. You don't change. That part of you doesn't change.
You mean, the spark of life.
Yes.
That you are does not change. You are. And that's it.
I am, or you are. But it's that part of you that is the eternal.
Mm-hmm. That's why I say it's the burning part. You, in the still point, you are in the burning of being.
And then relationships at the heart level, not the ones that are based on whether your hairpiece is this or that or whatever. The heart level relationships, the ones that you develop heart to heart and last throughout your life and into, even if these people go on to the eternal again, you still have the connection. Those things don't change. Those things don't change. And because they don't change, they have an eternalness to them. When you say change is bad, it's only when we're talking about things that have this ephemeralness to them. Things of the heart have more of an eternalness to them, and so therefore they are where we can actually find this point of rest. If you're looking for things that don't change, stop, get out of the I, me, get out of the head, and get into the heart.
True. Because the heart is that moment of now. And it's the still point. And sometimes it's difficult to be still.
Oh, yeah. The other piece that you find in the heart is that the heart, if you're residing and using the eyes of the heart, can look at all the other things that are changing. The fact that your knees are going and your everything is sagging and your hairline is receding into your collar, and all those things that are happening to your body and happening to things around you, when you use the eyes of the heart, it accepts all that. It says, those are things that change. They're also things that don't matter. And so when you start to think change is bad, if you move yourself into the perspective of the heart, you realize change isn't bad or good. Change doesn't matter. Or those are the changes, those I-me changes don't matter. The ones that do matter, the things that do matter, the things that you bring into your heart. I think in the story we wrote for Christopher in There's a Reaper, one of the things we said in there is that when crossing over, when going to the other side, when passing on out of this life, one of the things Chris said was, well, I won't know anyone in heaven. I'll be in heaven, but I won't know anyone there. And you had a wonderful answer for him.
Oh, that, yes. He had said, Mommy, I don't want to die. And I understood what he meant. And I just remember saying to him, oh, Chris, you know that everything here, this form dies. He's like, yes. And he did understand that. But if I go to heaven, I'll be with God. But I don't really know God.
I love that when he said that. I don't know God.
And I said, oh, Chris, do you remember what happens when you love somebody? And he said, yes. You put them in your heart. And I agreed, as I guess. You put the person you love in your heart, and they are there forever. And whenever you have a question, you can always ask that person that you put in your heart, that piece of them, and they will give you an answer. So he looked at me and said, Mom, what is that? How does that work? Like, well, when I go out and I have to buy food for everybody, like I bought these cookies, and you love these cookies? He's like, yeah. Like, how did you know? How did I know that you would love these cookies? I asked the Christopher in my heart, and he said yes. So he nodded. I said, okay, hon. When you go to heaven, what you'll discover is that I will be there waiting for you, just as your dad will and your brothers. Because heaven is eternal. It's outside of time. There's a mommy in heaven waiting for you right now. And he understood.
And that's the eternalness of the things that don't change in the heart.
Yes.
And that's where you find, in that case, change doesn't matter.
Constancy is found in the heart, and so is love. To hold the things, hold the people you love in your heart. You are there forever.
Right. And then life is good.
Life is always good.
And change is not bad. But unfortunately, we have to change. So this has been The Soul of the Everyman.
And I'm Margaret.
And I'm Michael. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening.